To the Grubhub, DoorDash, or any other food delivery employees, what is the strangest scenario you have had with an order? I was delivering to a couple 2 pizzas, and they were arguing like crazy, throwing crap crazy. As per covered rules for my job, I stepped back and watched the man grab the pizza and drop a rather large wad of cash on the pizza bag. He shut the door pretty quick, and while I grabbed the bag and the cash, a plate crashed on the door with the lady screaming, "That's the kinda crap I'm talking about, bro." I ran. I wonder if they ordered the pizza before or after they started arguing. I once had the person I was delivering to meet me in the restaurant's parking lot. This was the very early stages of COVID, so indoor dining was banned, and it was also a very popular restaurant, so the line was long as crap. I made $13 off a really easy delivery, so I'm not complaining. God, that is freaking genius. I'm reading this over and over, imagining the planning this dude had, and God, I kinda freaking admire him. That is brilliant. One time during the early days of the pandemic, I got an order for like a ton of barbecue ribs from some newly opened restaurant in Atlanta. I got all this food, drove out to some random upscale Hilton hotel off the beaten path. After a ton of back and forth with the concierge, he finally directed me to the correct room. I finally reach it, only to be met at the door by 2 naked folks and another 2 more waiting on the bed in the hotel room. I'm not saying those barbecue ribs were gonna be used in that orgy I interrupted, but I can't definitively say there wasn't a connection. Finished a Postmates delivery in the Hollywood Hills when I got pinged to pick up an order at the Starbucks that's just off Laurel Canyon, or in that general area, I can't remember exactly. I like delivering in this area because usually the tips were very good. The person ordering wanted 4 tall iced coffees with no ice. I shrug that part off because rich LA people are all freaking weirdos, but I was annoyed because I had to place it, which means I had to make those annoying requests instead of just pick up the drinks. I go into the Starbucks and the lady working the counter says, "We've been expecting you." And I was like, okay, if you're a Postmates courier, you know that if you have to place the order, the restaurant would not be expecting you. Seen a lot of posts in our Postmates by couriers who say they just straight up refuse those. Then she tells me that this is Ariana Grande's exact order and that I will be delivering to her house. It wasn't her name in the app, but it did occur to me that a celeb of her caliber probably use an assumed name or have an assistant order for her. I still had my doubts just because I'm a naturally skeptical person. When I got to the address, I had to enter a key code at the gate, which wasn't unusual for this area. But when I saw the view and saw that it was basically its own compound of multiple different houses, it occurred to me that even if it wasn't Ariana Grande's house, it had to be someone obscenely rich and famous. I pulled up to the house number specified in the app and texted that I was there. Per the instructions, the person who greeted me was a middle-aged 4 minutes and 10 seconds Latina woman with a limp. She said thanks and I left. You met Ariana at all? I'll see myself out. A guy I worked with had a delivery where the customer said to knock on the door and say food's here be or no tip. A couple weeks ago I had a customer pay in change. No big deal. Happens sometimes. The weird part is that all the change wasn't in a bag, an envelope. Nope. It was a vinyl glove. There was also a silver dollar in the change too. I managed to get 2 silver dollars when I was traveling. I had no idea why I had both a $1 coin and an $1 bill, lol. A grown man who insisted that I refer to him as Snow White. He tipped pretty good though. I'd take the money and say thanks Snow White and get back in my car. Hopefully that's the safe word. I used to deliver for Domino's and was delivering during a night with freezing rain, so it was very slick. I get to this one house with a steep driveway with no way I could drive up. I tried multiple ways to walk up the driveway and even on the grass, but would only make it a few feet. So I call the customer and explain the issue, and they come out with a rope and I tie the pizza bag to it. So they pull it up the driveway, take the pizza and put the cash in the bag with a nice tip. I love that they have a driveway rope handy. Got a few good stories delivering for the Hut about 10 years ago. 2 of my best runs were delivering to an orgy. The guy was sitting on his porch in a bathrobe and had to run inside to get more cash, being very careful to block my view inside. But when his biddy came to the door, I got a good look inside. 4 chicks and 2 dudes from what I could see, all naked with plenty of booze, drugs, and paraphernalia laying around. Not much for a tip, but an interesting delivery I'll never forget. Another, I had a delivery to a mansion of a house. When I get there, nobody answers the door or answers the phone number listed. As I'm about to give up and go back to the store, 3 10-12-year-old kids run up saying they ordered the pizza and their parents were out of town. While the parents were away, they taught themselves how to make homemade smoke bombs, which they used to inadvertently set their backyard on fire. I grabbed their hose and started putting out the fire. They didn't want to call the fire dept in fear of getting in trouble, but I made them do it. By the time the fire truck pulled up, I had taken care of the flames and the kids emptied all 3 of their pockets into my hands for about a $40 tip. Whoa, good on you. I used to deliver pizzas, and one time I arrived at a house at the same time as a driver from another pizza place. We looked at each other confused for a sec before we went to the door. Turns out they had some people over, and one of the people there really liked one restaurant over the other, so much so that they ordered a separate pizza. Had that happened to me too, except it was 3 different companies. The customers made bets on who would make it there first. It was pretty funny. They tipped all of us well. I was the first on scene. The app told me to pick up the food by 7:05. I drove right to the store, got the food at around 7:03, checked the app for drop-off instructions, and it said deliver by 7 o'clock. Okay, whatever. I got to the address at around 7:20. The building I needed to deliver to wasn't there. I walked around a bit and it was nowhere near where my map took me. I called the customer and said, "Hi, I have your food, but I've been walking around for a bit and can't find your building. Can you walk me through where it is?" They just said okay and hung up. I texted them that I can't deliver the food if I can't find their building. No response. I walked around for a bit more to find the building and I couldn't. I called the driver support line to explain what happened. As I was dialing, I got a text from the customer around 15 minutes after I called them telling me where their building was. Completely different place than where the app took me. I drove there, dropped off the food, and questioned why I bother doing this job. Those are people who use a fake address to place an order and then change to their much further address after the food is picked up, trying to force the driver to go a lot further for a lot less or get stuck cancelling their order. Cancel it every time. Don't deliver anything to those scumbags. I drive for Uber Eats and one time someone ordered Fresh Eye, a healthy food vegan place, and I saw that the order was 8 small bags of chips. Not even anything off their menu, just 8 bags of chips. Then while I was on my way to deliver it, they messaged me twice in the app. The first time they said please and the second message was be careful. To this day I have no idea what was going on, or why they didn't go buy chips from the convenience store near their house. LOL reminds me of a time I had to pick up a single 2L Pepsi from a convenience store on the opposite end of town as the customer's house. There were plenty of other convenience stores open and online within a 1 kilometer radius of the guy's house. I guess Pepsi from 14 kilometers away tastes better because he tipped well. My wife and I have done Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Instacart for about 2 years now. We don't have too many stories, mostly just high, drunk, or naked people answering the door. My wife is in a few Facebook groups though, and we just heard about a woman who was delivering some food into a private gated home. The gate had to be manually opened by the homeowner and he let her in no problem. But then after she delivered the food, he wouldn't let her leave. It took calling the police, them arriving, and filing a report for her to be able to leave, and learn that this was the 3rd time he's done this. Uber, though, won't ban him from their service. Uber will ban him once he rapes and murders one of them and then have some PR announcement about how they take their contractors' safety very seriously. My boyfriend and I used to do grocery delivery. One time I had a woman order 33 oranges. Another time, he had someone order 24 jars of vanilla frosting. The store didn't even have enough vanilla frosting in stock to complete the order. Then 1 week later, we saw that the same man placed another order for 20 more jars of vanilla frosting. Vanilla frosting is a terribly delicious snack if you hate life. Once I picked up an order from a Graze and they had no idea what Grubhub was or that they were on the app. Had to call the horrible customer service and deal with them for like an hour before the restaurant believed it was real. Then they gave me the wrong food. Only did that for a year before I realized how completely disorganized and unprofessional of a company Grubhub is, at least in my area. Some of the delivery companies, with their own delivery people, have added restaurants to their roster, not just without their knowledge, but even against their wishes. The restaurants hate it, because if anything goes wrong, they're the ones who get calls and low ratings online, but they honestly have no record of the end customer, and no control over the delivery service. I'm a bit late to the thread, but I used to deliver for Pizza Hut. One hot summer afternoon, I got a delivery for a pizza and wings to what looked like a restaurant. Turns out, there were small studio apartments above it, and I knock on the door anxiously. This was a particularly seedy area of town. This guy in his 50s answers the door butt naked, clearly whacked out on some sort of stimulant, and gives me a bunch of ones. I peer into his apartment as he's fishing for change, and there's someone on his bed in this trash-filled apartment in a full gimp suit and gas mask. Then I noticed the smell. It smelled strongly of pee and crap. I think he was peeing playing with poop with whoever was in the gimp suit. I got the change and immediately left and shut it out of my memory until I saw the title of this thread. Also, one time I was doing a delivery and there was a driver bee shooting about block away around the corner as I was walking up to the door. I had a shotgun in my trunk and the mother said, "Oh my god, they're shooting again. Come inside quick." So I grabbed my shotgun, ran inside and waited until long after the shot stopped before I went back to my car. She tipped me heavily for protecting her. She never told my boss about the gun and no one got killed in the driver-bee. Thankfully. Pizza delivery is some dark crap sometimes. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 3:30. Regular calls and orders his regular pizza. This guy was always nice to me, but I could tell he was doing some hard drugs because he had lost so much weight and started to get lesions on his forehead and hands as time went on. I get to his house around 4, maybe 4:15. Deliver the pizza, and I'm walking back to my car when I feel an iron grip on my shoulder and someone shouts, "You gotta get out of the way." I turn and there's 4 or 5 county sheriff's deputies in full tactical gear. There was probably 15-20 police officers in total. They led me behind one of their cars and tell me not to move, then bust this guy's door down and go in shouting drug task force and all that. I had to stay there for about an hour and had my car searched and everything. All that they found was a travel mug my mom gave me a while before I thought I had lost. Never took another delivery to that guy. I wonder about him sometimes. I never found out the actual reason behind the raid, but I have my suspicions. Something tells me it had to do with drugs. Just a hunch. I worked for a delivery company about 6 years ago. I got an order for a single cigar. Total cost of goods about $3. Delivery fee $13.50. He lived way the heck out in the boonies. He also tipped my like $10. Turns out he was drunk and delivery fee is less than a DUI. Hey man, say what you wanna say, but he was being responsible. I got one. That one time I followed a weird middle-aged guy into his basements for a life-affirming surprise. Delivering pizzas, my attitude is that nothing can really go that wrong so long as I drive carefully, avoid muggings, and never enter a customer's home. When I was younger and hadn't yet adopted that last rule, I delivered a proper stack of pizzas to a really nice house in a very wealthy neighborhood where I was greeted by a classic mid-50s suburbanite guy. I had like 50 pounds of pizzas and he was just vibrating with excitement like a little kid, asking me if I wanted to see something amazing in his basement where the pizzas were going anyway. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of red flag. But from his vibe and the amount of pizza he'd ordered, I figured he was having some kind of game night with his buddies and was eager to show off his layout, entertainment system, bar, etc. Wealthy guys love showing the sweet toys they worked for to broke younger folks. And when you're working for tips, sometimes an O or an R at a car or in home luxury you don't care about is worth an extra $10. So I followed him into his huge house, preparing myself to express amazement at his whatever. We get down to the basement and it was a puppy party. A true and actual puppy party. Some sort of adoption event he'd set up for his kid's b-day. Exactly as I'd expected. There was a classic rich guy basement with a full bar and pool table and wall-sized entertainment center and huge sectional couch and recliners. What I didn't expect was a gaggle of 8th grade girls playing with dozens of puppies being supervised by handlers. Every kind of puppy I could imagine. I set the pizzas down on the bar and just sat on the floor and squealed and giggled while puppies tried to eat the smell of pizza off of me, succeeding only in devouring my heart through my face. After a few minutes I stood up all teary-eyed and flushed with happiness, and the guy just grinned his understanding at me, gave me an envelope of cash, and sent me on my way. The hit of oxytocin and serotonin from those puppies still warmed me years later. Freaking puppy party. Man. My life is full in knowing that can even happen. I delivered pizza in a college town about 15 years ago. I took an order in the early afternoon to an apartment building I had never been to before. It had a locked entry and buzzer style door, which was unusual for the area. It was usually cheap student housing, or the hallways of the apartment buildings were open air style. It takes a few minutes, but someone finally buzzes the door and lets me in. I walk towards the apartment and see the door is open and can hear really loud music. I get to the door and I see the TV is on with full volume, and across the room is a radio also full volume. I look to the left and a man is walking out of the kitchen, and I see he is in a hospital gown. His hair is kind of dirty and messed up and he seems to be completely out of it. I tell him the total and he starts looking around for the money. Yes. The gown was tied in the back, but it did not hold against the constant bending over looking in various areas. At this point this is already one of the weirdest things to happen to me, but then it kicks it up a notch. The college town I was in is Lawrence, Kansas, and anyone who has lived there, especially near downtown, will probably know of the peace sign guy. This dude looked like your classic Vietnam War vet. Long hair, sunglasses, leather jacket with no shirt, jeans and big boots. He would walk around with the cigarettes in his mouth throwing up the peace sign to anyone and everyone. He was mostly harmless, but he could get upset and lash out verbally at people, although I did not know that at the time. So who should appear at the door behind me, now boxing me into the apartment between him and hospital gown man, peace sign guy, and he is P. He starts yelling about the noise and he's having to scream pretty loudly just to be heard. Hospital gown man starts yelling right back at him. He still hasn't found the money. I contemplate trying the patio door and running for it. Finally peace sign guy leaves. Hospital gown man finds the money and proceeds to pull out a massive wad of crisp $20. He tipped pretty well, too. I worked as a delivery driver for a sub chain that was notoriously weirdly quick. My first week there I was told of a regular, David. David would frequently order a veggie sandwich. No onions. Onions do not come on this sandwich. Anytime I answered the phone to take his order he would compliment my voice and generally make things weird, which wasn't really surprising because the sandwiches he ordered were not for him, they were for Casey, his favorite stripper at the local strip club. I tolerated talking to him on the phone because nothing brought me more joy than delivering this sandwich to Casey. Every time I went I stood patiently in the front area sex shop listening to the extremely loud bass at 12:30 p.m. waiting for Casey to finish whatever she was doing to accept this gift. Casey always wore these amazing stripper heels that made her tower over me, and she was always happy to see me. Mostly because she was absolutely loaded every time I saw her, but also because I was basically the only female driver she ever saw, and I know dang well the men I worked with also loved delivering to Casey. There were multiple times where she would roll her eyes and say I brought lunch today, but she would always tip $5 on a $6 sub, and that's what matters. I only worked there for 6 months, but I saw Casey at least once a week, usually more. It was always the same. David calls and places an order, and Casey stumbles out to sign for it. When my last day came around and David called, I was thrilled. I didn't take the phone call, but I was happily given the delivery to commemorate my last day. So I whip up a sandwich and head on my way. I walk through the doors head held high and I'm immediately met with a familiar hello. David. Of all days. David is at the fricking strip club and David is here to not tip me on a $6 sub. David also is very happy to meet me and is so glad to see my face, as he loved hearing my voice. I smiled politely and ran out of there, thanking the Lord himself that it was my last day and feeling like I flew too close to the sun with my favorite stripper. Used to deliver pizza. I was 18. Brought a huge order to a house on a weekday evening where clearly a bunch of middle-aged friends were having a huge party. The door opened. A 40-something guy answered and yelled over his shoulder, "The pizza's here." Everyone was clearly trashed already. It's around 7 PM. He gives me a 1-second sign and goes back in the house. I hear him telling everyone to give up cash to pitch in for the order. Another 40-something wasted lady comes busting out past me, goes to the passenger side of a truck, then just lies the top part of her body down inside the truck on the seat, and I think falls asleep for a few minutes. I'm on the doorstep holding 10 pizzas, door wide open. Rowdy 40-50-year-old's party is hopping, and the lady who has my money is asleep with her front half in the truck. I'm about to yell for someone else to help me when she gets up, then stumbles over to me. Conversation goes something like this. "Wasted lady, how much is it?" Me, $108.25. WL, staring at a wad of bills in her hands. She then shoves them all at me. "You count that." I count it. Me, "You gave me $164. WL, is that too much?" Me, "Well, I don't think so, but your bill is only $108.25. WL, "Well, you count that." Me, "Mom, it's $164. She stares at me a second, looks at the pizza, looks at the money, reaches into her pocket, pulls out another $10 bill and slaps it on top of the pile of money. WL, "And there's your tip." I unloaded the pizzas and took off as fast as I could. Best tip I've ever made in my life. The delivery instructions were to beat on the door like you're the cops, and then roll like a T-Rex to scare my kids. I did this, but a small, extremely confused lady answered the door. Apparently the husband had written those instructions for a prior delivery and had not realized delivery instructions copy over to the next delivery if not deleted. Many years ago I was a driver for Pizza Hut. We had someone place an order. Their home address was saved to our system, but in the notes it said to deliver it to a hotel literally down the road from said home address. So I go to the hotel, knock on the door, and a dude answers in his boxers with a girl in bed peeking around to see who was at the door. 99% sure I walked into an affair encounter. Oh god, I just probably gave a delivery driver a story of their own tonight when they called me to clarify directions. Their number was the same area code as a spam call I got the other day that I answered and actually had a human on it and not a robot. So I assumed it was them again and I answered the call and just said meow instead of hi. Then they asked for me by name, like the last spam call did, and I just kept saying meow meow every time he asked me something until he was like, "Mom, this is your Postmates driver," and then I died from embarrassment. I delivered to a murder scene once. Not as interesting as the opening line makes it sound, but definitely strange. I used to deliver pizza. We got an order from a regular. I went to a guy's house and knocked. There was no answer, but I could see his lights on. Dogs were barking, and he had paid already. After a few minutes, and several attempts at calling him, I shrugged my shoulders and left. I even got to eat his food myself. The next day I had 4 cops knock on my door. Turns out the guy had been murdered sometime in the half hour between ordering the food and me arriving. The dogs were apparently free to roam through his backyard and part of his house, but he was killed in a different section they couldn't get to. The cops tracked me down through my phone. Had no idea I was a delivery guy until they talked to me. It didn't take the cops long to realize I wasn't involved, at which point I never heard from them again. But it made the local paper when they arrested the murderer, and she was in the house while I was knocking. She could have opened the door and taken the pizzas, and I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Frick me, that is pretty wild. I delivered pizzas to a rec center for a kid's birthday. There was about 12 pizzas, and they were in the warming bags. I tried to carry all the bags at once, which led to boxes being slanted and the pizzas sliding squished into the corners. When I pass the pizzas to the guy, he opens them up and is super upset. He's like, "I'm not paying for this," which is fair, but the policy was if you don't like the pizza, you can either not pay and I take the pizzas back to the store, or I take the pizzas back to the store and then come back with new ones and you pay full price for those ones. But he was like, "Nah, I only have this place booked for another 20 minutes. We're eating these. but I ain't paying. So, I didn't really care. But if he didn't pay, it came out of my wallet, so I called my boss, who was a very aggressive loudmouth piece of work, and told her what was up. When the guy grabbed the phone from me, and he and my boss began screaming at each other over the phone for about 5 minutes, until he screamed, "The only way you're getting this money is if I send IT to you up your driver's butt," and then he covered the mic, winked at me and whispered, "I'm just kidding," and then he hung up. The bill was about $140, so he looked at me and said, "I'm giving you $70 for the pizza, and I'm giving you $40 as a tip. Do not give that $40 to that b of a boss you have." So I went back to the store, told her he would only pay $70, and she said, "Oh well, at least we got something," and I got a big tip even though I was the one who screwed up. I had food that was clearly for one person. Burger, fries, shake, drive up to a house that's very obviously a family house in a very nice neighborhood. No biggie. It was already dark on a weekend night. I walk up to door and the room right next to door is the only one with lights on. It had those expensive wooden horizontal blinds, but you know how you can see a tiny bit through them even when closed? I could see it was an office with wood furniture and a computer monitor on a desk, and I could see movement of some kind. Ring bell. Nothing, but still see movement. Wait. Ring again. Nothing, still movement. Bang on door. Nope. Still movement. At this point I think it's the dog or cat in there or something. Bang again. Same result. Then I think maybe someone has earbuds in like a dumb butt and can't hear. I text, "I'm out here." No change. Then I hear voices and walk to edge of house. Often hear people use side or garage doors and are annoyed you didn't know they'd do that. Nope. Neighbor. Well, WTF. I call. Call is answered. Fumble. Breathless hello. I'm at the front door. I'll be right there. Sorry. Movement stops. Door opens and really early 20s dude, clearly only in boxers, trying to keep lower half behind door, grabs food and won't look me in the eye. Yee. I think I was an unwitting audience to a little self-enjoyment at the family computer. Ick. I have a similar story, except guy was a teenager and not alone. I'm convinced I prevented a teen pregnancy that day. Former delivery driver for a Chinese food restaurant. Our restaurant delivered beer, not sure if that was even legal, and there was one lady who would frequently order 2 egg rolls and 2 6-packs of way overpriced Corona. This relatively small lady, however, had loss of mobility in her legs for whatever reason, and I guess it was most efficient for her to drag herself around her apartment, as she usually answered a door from her floor and sometimes retreated to the kitchen to get money for payment. Using this method, after a while, it became clear that she had a problem and felt morally wrong for me to continue delivering her vice straight to her front door. But she tipped well and my bosses were not turning down her business until one day she made her usual order, and as I arrived, she didn't have the funds for her order. As I was already uncomfortable completing these deliveries for her, I told her I couldn't provide her order without payment, and she dragged herself limp legs behind her down the breezeway of her apartment complex, crying and begging me for the booze. Still haunts me sometimes. ETA. This was 12 years ago. Was a delivery driver with a local pizza place for about a year. Strangest encounter I ever had was a delivery to a house on the other side of town. Dude answers the door in just his boxers, which is not that strange by itself. I look up at him and he has almost no white in his eyes. They were almost entirely black. I briefly look past him and notice there is no furniture in his house at all. 10-15 cats come running out between this dude's legs and out the door, and he says, "Where did all those cats come from?" I say, "From inside your house." He didn't believe me. Drugs are a heck of a drug. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.